The galaxy had many dangerous places, but nothing was feared more than the Sandstorm Trial. It was a test older than most civilizations, a brutal challenge created by the SpaceOrcs to measure true strength. Every year the strongest warriors from different planets came to prove their power, and every year they failed. Not a single alien had ever returned from the center of the desert, the place where the storm lived. The SpaceOrcs believed only a creature born inside chaos could survive such a monstrous storm. That morning the arena was overflowing with warriors, giant reptilian fighters, armored insectoids, metallic beings, and even flame-skinned creatures stood proudly under the burning sun. All of them were eager to prove themselves. All of them believed they could be the first to conquer the deadly storm. But then the gate opened again and a single human walked inside the arena. His name was Reed Walker, a young explorer from Earth with a calm face and steady eyes. He carried no weapons, no armor, no technology. He only had a small bag on his shoulder and dust on his boots. A wave of laughter rolled through the crowd. The SpaceOrcs shouted from the stands, "Is this a joke? A human in the Sandstorm Trial? Send him home before he turns into dust." But Reed showed no reaction. He simply looked at the horizon where the desert stretched endlessly like a burning ocean. His quiet confidence made a few warriors uncomfortable. Humans were known for surviving strange environments, but this was different. This was a place where even SpaceOrc generals had died screaming. The High Commander of the SpaceOrcs stepped forward. He was huge, covered in thick armor plates, and his voice shook the arena. "Warriors," he announced, "today you face the trial no one has ever survived. Inside the desert waits the great storm, a living beast made of sand, heat, and spinning blades. It shows no mercy, it listens to no warrior, it respects only one law, strength." He then looked at Reed with a smirk. "You human will not last 10 minutes. The aliens laughed again, but Reed only replied, "We'll see." The horn sounded, loud enough to shake the ground. The gates opened to the desert and the trial began. Dozens of warriors rushed forward, screaming battle cries. They carried shields, glowing staffs, heavy cannons, and high-tech armor. Reed walked behind them slowly, almost casually, as if he was taking a morning stroll and not entering the deadliest storm in the galaxy. The sun burned the sand until it looked like molten gold. The wind tasted like fire. And far away a shape moved, a giant wall of spinning dust. The storm looked alive, angry, hungry. It roared like a beast waiting for prey. The warriors reached the first area and immediately raised their shields. The wind slammed into them like a hammer. Some fell back, some pushed forward, some screamed as the sand cut their skin like knives. Reed stood still for a moment, studying the storm. His eyes followed the movement of the sand, the direction of the wind, the pattern in the chaos. While the aliens fought the storm, Reed tried to understand it. He whispered quietly, "So this is the famous desert." A reptilian warrior was lifted into the air by a powerful gust and thrown into the dunes, disappearing instantly. An insectoid fighter lost his footing and slid into the spinning sand, his armor shredded in seconds. Even the stronger SpaceOrc soldiers struggled. They pushed forward with all their power, but the storm pushed back harder. The desert was claiming its victims one by one. Within 20 minutes the battlefield was filled with broken weapons and dying warriors. The audience watching from safety screens saw chaos everywhere. The storm grew louder, thicker, more violent. And still Reed kept walking. "What is he doing?" one of the alien commentators shouted. "He has no shield. He has no armor. He's not even running." Reed's calm movement shocked everyone. Instead of fighting the wind, he moved with it. Instead of resisting the sand, he lowered his head and allowed the storm to guide him. Aliens could not believe a human understood the storm better than them. A SpaceOrc scout zoomed the camera. They saw Reed stepping off the main path and moving toward the left side of the desert, a place no warrior had ever gone before. It looked like normal dunes, but Reed noticed something different. A trail of tiny animals disappearing underground. A shift in the sand texture. A temperature drop that others missed. Reed murmured, "Someone is living here, hiding from the storm." He followed the signs. The storm grew louder, as if warning him to turn back. But Reed kept going. Every step felt like he was walking into the mouth of a monster. Every gust tried to push him down. Every grain of sand cut his skin. But Reed whispered with a small smile, "You're strong, but not unbeatable." The aliens watching felt chills. For the first time in history, someone was moving deeper into the storm with confidence. Not as prey but as a challenger. And somewhere inside the storm, something giant and green was waiting for him. Something that would change the entire galaxy's understanding of human survival. The trial had begun. and the desert had no idea what kind of creature it was facing. Reed kept walking deeper into the storm. The wind screamed around him like a wild animal. Sand scratched his skin trying to tear him apart, but his steps were calm and steady. Each movement felt like he knew exactly where he was going. Behind him, the other warriors had already fallen. Armor torn apart, shields broken, weapons burned by heat. Their bodies disappeared into the endless dunes. The SpaceOrc cameras showed nothing but chaos. Yet Reed moved like he was walking a different path than everyone else. High above, the commanders watched the screens with disbelief. The insectoid commentator shouted, "This human has lasted 40 minutes. That is impossible. No warrior in our history survived this long." The SpaceOrc High Commander leaned closer to the monitor. His voice was low and confused. "He is not fighting the storm. He is thinking." Reed stopped at the base of a tall dune. He crouched down and touched the sand. It felt cooler here, almost soft. The storm's main force was hitting the right side, but this area, it was different. More peaceful, more alive. Reed smiled, found it. He climbed the dune slowly. Every step precise, every movement measured. The storm tried to throw him back, but he kept climbing. As he reached the top, he saw something that made him stop in awe. A shape rose from the sand. Huge, green, glowing faintly from within. It looked like a tree, a rock, a plant, and a creature all at once. It was a giant cactus taller than a small mountain. Its surface shone like polished emerald under the storm's lightning. The audience gasped. "What is that? That structure is not in our records. A living plant this size should be impossible." But Reed looked at it calmly, his voice soft. "I knew something had to survive here." He walked closer, studying the cactus. It was covered in small holes, natural vents that opened and closed like breathing. Each vent released cool air and moisture. Reed placed his hand near one vent. A soft breeze touched his skin, refreshing and clean. Inside the vents, he heard dripping water. "Life, shelter, safety." Reed whispered, "Beautiful." The cactus was a natural fortress. An ancient desert creature that adapted over thousands of years. Aliens never found it because they only fought the storm. No one ever looked for life inside it. No one ever tried to understand the desert. Until now. Reed noticed small desert animals crawling toward tiny cracks at the base. They were hiding inside the cactus, escaping the storm. He followed their trail. A thin, faint line in the sand. Most warriors would never notice it. But Reed's eyes were trained for survival. He had survived jungles, ice storms, toxic gases, and deadly wildlife on Earth. The desert here was brutal, yes, but not unfamiliar. He knelt at one of the cracks and whispered, "Mind if I join you?" Reed took a pointed rock and widened the crack gently. The cactus moved slightly but did not resist. It accepted him the same way it accepted the animals. Reed slipped inside carefully. Instantly the sound of the storm faded. The inside was dark, cold, and filled with fresh humidity. A miracle inside death. He sat down and took a deep breath. The air tasted clean. His heartbeat slowed. His body relaxed for the first time since entering the desert. He smiled, perfect shelter. Outside, the storm exploded with even more power. It sounded angry, as if it realized someone had escaped its wrath. Lightning cracked across the sky. Sand blasted the ground like bullets. The storm wanted Reed, but the cactus protected him. The SpaceOrc High Commander's jaw dropped. He found a living shelter. That plant, it should not exist. Another alien shouted. He is inside it. The human crawled into the cactus. Is he insane? But Reed was already settling in. He tore off a small piece of cactus fiber and studied it. It was tough, flexible, and slightly wet. Perfect for insulation. Perfect for armor. He whispered, "You're not just a plant. You're a survival machine." Reed drank a little water dripping down the cactus wall. It tasted pure and cool. Then he leaned back and rested his head. His eyelids grew heavy. The storm roared, but he felt safe. For the first time in centuries. Someone had found the secret of the desert. Reed closed his eyes and said calmly, "I think I can take a quick nap." The entire galaxy watching the trial went silent. A human, inside a storm that killed armies, was taking a nap inside a giant cactus. The legend of the Sandstorm Trial was already changing, and Reed had only just begun. The desert did not like being defeated. For thousands of years the Sandstorm Trial killed every creature that entered its domain. No warrior ever lasted long enough to discover its secrets. No species ever dared challenge the natural monster that lived inside the dunes. But today something new happened. A human survived its first attack. He hid inside the giant cactus like it was a safe house. And even worse, he fell asleep. The storm felt humiliated. The desert roared louder than before, shaking the sky and earth together. Inside the cactus, Reed slowly opened his eyes. A deep vibration moved through the walls of the giant plant. The air felt hotter. The ground trembled like footsteps of a giant creature. Reed whispered, "You're angry, aren't you?" Outside, lightning slammed into the dunes. Red sparks danced across the sand. The storm was becoming something else. It was no longer just wind and dust. It was evolving, becoming more violent, almost alive. In the SpaceOrc arena, alarms began to ring. The High Commander shouted, "This is not normal. The storm has never reached this stage." Another officer yelled, "It is reacting to the human. It is changing because of him." Thousands of spectators watched the chaos on giant screens. They saw dunes lifting like rising waves. They saw whirlwinds twisting into deadly shapes. They saw the storm forming patterns, hunting patterns. No one had ever witnessed this level of rage. But Reed stayed calm. He ran his fingers along the cactus wall, feeling the vibrations. "You kept me safe once," he whispered. "Let's see if you can keep up." The cactus responded with a low, deep pulse, like a heartbeat. Reed understood it was alive in ways no alien had imagined. He studied the internal structure carefully. Thick fibers, wet surfaces, natural cooling systems. It was a living fortress built by the desert itself. But even the cactus seemed afraid now. Cracks formed on its outside surface. Some vents closed tightly, some opened too wide. Reed knew the storm was getting stronger than the cactus could handle. He couldn't stay hidden forever. He stood up and stretched. The space inside was tight but comfortable. He took one deep breath and said, "Time to move." Reed pushed open the vent he entered through. A flood of burning wind hit him instantly. He closed his eyes, letting his senses adjust. Then he stepped fully outside. The sight in front of him was unreal. The desert had transformed into a battlefield of nature. Red lightning cracked the sky. Dust tornadoes spun like giant monsters. The sand glowed like metal heated in a forge. The storm was now a creature of fury, and it wanted Reed dead. But instead of panicking, Reed smiled a little. "You really are alive," he whispered to the storm. "Let's learn how angry you can get." He wrapped cactus fibers around his arms and chest. The material stuck to his skin like armor. It cooled him and protected him against cutting sand. Reed looked like a desert warrior blessed by nature itself. The SpaceOrc commentators were losing their minds. He made armor from the cactus. That is impossible. No other species thinks like this. Reed ran across the dunes, keeping his body low. He avoided the strongest wind currents by using the storm's rhythm. He learned its timing, its breathing, its pulse. He wasn't fighting it, he was dancing with it. The storm responded by getting even more violent. A tornado spun toward him, roaring like a beast. Reed dove into a shallow trench, sliding under the sand. The tornado passed over him, barely a few inches away. Then a sudden burst of hot air threw him forward. He rolled, landed hard, and got back up instantly. He wiped his face and said, "That was close." The storm was furious. Lightning struck behind him, turning sand into glass. Red waves of dust lunged at him like claws. But Reed moved with instinct. Every motion fluid. Every step calculated. At the arena, the crowd was silent. Even the loud SpaceOrcs did not know what to say. One whispered, "He is not just surviving. He is learning." Another murmured, "He is understanding the storm better than we do." Reed found a higher dune and climbed it despite the wind. At the top he looked around. He saw patterns no alien had ever seen. The strongest currents moved in circles. The weak points of the storm were narrow but clear. He whispered, "You have soft spots." The storm screamed in frustration. A massive dust wave rose like a wall and crashed toward Reed. He braced himself. He dug his feet into the dune. He lowered his center of gravity. The wave hit him with explosive force. But he stayed standing. Barely, but standing. When the dust cleared, Reed exhaled slowly. Still not enough. He looked back at the giant cactus in the distance. Its glow weaker now. Its body shaking. Reed tightened his cactus fiber armor and said, "Don't worry. I'm still here." He turned back to the raging storm, ready for whatever came next. The desert wanted to break him. But Reed Walker was not a normal warrior. He was a human. And humans were built to adapt. The storm had become angry. But Reed was just getting started. The desert changed again. This time it didn't hide its anger. It screamed openly, shaking every grain of sand like a living creature preparing for war. The storm had grown huge, bending the sky, twisting the air, and darkening the world. This was the storm's final form. The one no alien had ever witnessed and lived long enough to describe. Reed stood at the top of the dune, watching the red lightning dance across the sky. His cactus fiber armor clung to him like green shadows, glowing faintly under every flash of light. He tightened the straps around his waist and shoulders. The desert wind pulled at him, trying to rip him apart. But Reed only whispered, "All right, show me everything." Back at the SpaceOrc arena, chaos broke out. Technicians shouted warnings. Screens flickered as the storm overloaded sensors. The High Commander slammed his fist on the console. "This is the strongest the storm has ever become. No creature should survive this level." Another officer yelled, "But the human is still moving." On the screens they saw Reed walking down the dune. Slowly, steadily, like he was strolling through a light breeze instead of a world-ending storm. It made no sense. But Reed studied every motion of the wind. He watched how the sand rose and fell in repeating patterns. He learned when to step, when to wait, when to duck. He adapted faster than the storm could change. The storm roared louder. A wall of red dust rose like a tsunami behind him. It lunged toward Reed with terrifying speed. Reed jumped into a shallow trench he dug earlier. He lay flat, letting the wave pass over him. For a moment, darkness swallowed him completely. He could not breathe. He could not see. But he kept his calm, counting the seconds, feeling the movement of the sand with his fingertips. Then the wave passed. Reed pushed himself up, coughing slightly. "That was heavy," he whispered. "But I'm still here." The storm hated that. It unleashed another attack. This time lightning struck the ground in random bursts. Glowing cracks formed around Reed. Heat surged like fire chasing him. Reed jumped between the cracks. He used cactus fibers tightened around his boots to shield him from the burning ground. Every move was risky, but he made it look natural, as if he had trained for this moment his whole life. The giant cactus in the distance shook violently. Its green glow flickered like a dying flame. Parts of its outer shell cracked and peeled away. Reed's eyes narrowed. "If that collapses, I lose my shelter," he whispered, "and maybe my way out." He knew what he had to do. He couldn't hide anymore. He had to face the storm head-on. Reed dashed toward the center of the desert where the storm's heart raged strongest. The wind punched him like a giant fist. Sand needles cut into his arms and neck despite the armor. His vision blurred. But he pushed forward. Step by step, breath by breath. Slow, steady, unbreakable. The SpaceOrcs watching felt chills. One whispered, "He's not surviving anymore. He's challenging the storm." Another added quietly, "He moves like he understands it, like he's part of it." Reed finally reached a high ridge overlooking the storm's core. Below him spun a massive vortex of red sand, lightning, and pure destruction. It was the storm's heart, the strongest force in the desert. Aliens died here in seconds. Even SpaceOrc generals couldn't stand 1 minute in its presence. Reed crouched, observing the spinning currents. He noted the timing, the direction, the weak spots where the wind dipped for a fraction of a second. "It's like a breathing pattern," he murmured. "Inhale, exhale." He waited for the exact moment. The desert inhaled. The wind pulled inward. Reed ran. Straight into the vortex. The audience screamed. Some turned away, expecting instant death. But Reed moved inside the vortex like a leaf in water. He used the wind's pull to slide deeper. Then jumped sideways when the pressure shifted. Sand blasted past him. Lightning sparked inches from his head. But he kept moving. Every movement perfectly timed. Every step aligned with the storm's rhythm. This was not luck. This was human instinct. Adapt, survive, learn, overcome. This was human instinct. Adapt, survive, learn, overcome. Reed reached the very center and plunged his cactus spear, crafted earlier, into the sand. The spear's wet fibers anchored into the vortex's soft point, creating a momentary disruption. A break in the storm's cycle. The desert howled in pain. The vortex twisted violently. And then, the storm collapsed. Red sand burst outward like an exploding mountain. Wind currents died instantly. The sky opened. Silence fell. Reed stood alone in the middle of the desert, covered in dust, bruised, tired, but alive. The horn of the arena blared in shock. The trial was complete. Reed had survived the final hour. He had done the impossible. He whispered softly, "I told you, not unbeatable. The desert was silent now. The sky cleared like someone had wiped its surface clean. The heat faded, the wind calmed, and the dunes stopped shaking. What remained was a vast, quiet battlefield. A battlefield won by a single human. Reed Walker stood in the center of the dead storm. His cactus armor torn, his skin bruised, his breath heavy. But his eyes still carried the calm confidence that brought him this far. He looked around, taking in the stillness. For the first time since the trial began, the desert felt peaceful, almost gentle. Far behind him, the giant cactus, his shelter, was collapsing slowly, its glowing veins dimming like a lantern at the end of its life. Reed walked toward it. His hand brushed the cactus surface one last time. "Thank you," he whispered. The cactus pulsed weakly as if acknowledging his words. Then it sank deeper into the sand, disappearing forever. High above, the SpaceOrc arena screens zoomed in on Reed. The audience was completely silent. No cheers, no laughter, no mocking. Just awe, shock, respect. The High Commander stepped forward, his eyes locked on the human's silhouette. He muttered, "No creature in history has done what he has done. No one has ever defeated the storm." Reed began walking back toward the arena. The dunes felt lighter now. The sun softened its heat. It was almost like the desert itself was watching him leave with quiet admiration. As Reed approached the boundary gates, the entire crowd instinctively stood. Even the rough, battle-hungry SpaceOrcs straightened their posture. They had mocked him hours ago, called him weak, soft, fragile. Now they looked at him the same way ancient tribes once looked at legendary heroes. The gate opened slowly. Reed stepped through, covered in dust and cactus fiber. He carried no trophy, no weapon, no armor worth keeping. Yet he walked as if he had returned from conquering a universe. The moment he entered the arena, every warrior lowered their head. A full bow of respect. Something never done before for any species. Reed blinked in surprise. "I didn't expect that," he murmured. The High Commander approached him, a massive figure towering over him. He placed his giant armored fist on his chest in the SpaceOrc salute. His voice shook with pride. "Human, you have done what our strongest warriors could not. You faced the storm without armor. You survived without power. You conquered without violence." Reed gave a small tired smile. "I didn't conquer it," he said quietly. "I understood it." The arena fell silent again. Those words struck like thunder, because for centuries the SpaceOrcs believed strength was only about force. Today, a human proved strength could come from the mind, from patience, from adaptation. Reed had changed the meaning of survival. The High Commander lifted his voice to the entire galaxy. "From this day forward, this human shall be known as the Desert Breaker, the one who tamed the storm." The crowd erupted, not with wild cheering but with something deeper. A sound of respect. A sound that warriors make only when honoring someone they fear and admire at the same time. Reed stepped forward and spoke simply. "It was never about beating the storm. You all fight it. You all try to overpower it. But storms don't care about force. They care about understanding." The commanders looked at each other, confused but humbled. Reed continued, "You cannot fight nature. You must listen to it." His words spread through the arena like fire. Every species, every warrior, every general realized how small they truly were compared to nature. And how humans, those strange beings from a chaotic world called Earth, could survive anything by adapting. A young SpaceOrc soldier stepped forward. "Human," he asked, "how did you stay calm when the storm tried to kill you?" Reed smiled gently. "Because storms are loud," he said. "But fear is louder. And if you silence fear, even a storm becomes quiet." The entire arena froze. Those words were powerful. True. Legendary. The High Commander then placed a heavy metal made from desert stone and cactus fiber around Reed's neck. "With this," he declared, "you are not just a survivor. You are a teacher. You are a warrior of nature." Reed exhaled deeply, finally letting the exhaustion settle over him. He looked up at the sky. The desert sky that now looked peaceful, almost friendly. He whispered softly, "Well, that was a storm." The arena laughed, not mockingly but with real admiration. They knew they had witnessed something that would be told for generations. The Sandstorm Trial was no longer a symbol of death. It was now the story of a human. A human who listened, adapted, survived. A human who broke a 1,000-year myth. Reed Walker walked out of the arena with quiet steps. Not as a weak species. Not as a tiny creature in a giant universe. But as the Desert Breaker. The Storm Tamer. The human who proved that true strength is not force. True strength is understanding. And thus a new legend was born. One that would echo across galaxies. One that even the desert itself would remember forever.